Hello, my name is Johnny Downs. I'm the CAMHS Digital Lab lead and the Senior Clinical Lecturer at the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. I think my job today is to give you a very short explainer of what I have been speaking about, and then to give you one take-home message about the talk that I gave. So I explained how the lab was set up. I talked about the four main themes, which is work in the population and clinical academic domain, our work in the digital therapeutics and assessment domain, our work in the data science and discovery domain, and then finally how we wrap it all together, which is our education, outreach and training domain. So I explain those four work streams, which essentially are the detail of them, which is covered in other talks, relates to how we make use of data that is already collected. So data that we found, how do we gather insights that can either inform clinical services or inform academic colleagues about patterns and problems within child mental health services. Our data assessment and therapeutics is about how do we collect better data, either from using digital tools, subjective measures, and then even objective measures, how we bring those into the healthcare record, and then how do we use those to discern pathways of care, and therefore start to use digital therapeutic approaches so people can start to get information and treatment early in the care pathway. And then data discovery is where we kind of cover all kinds of interesting, potential promising tools that may find their way into clinical practice that involves speech analytics, or using objective movement data, using wearable devices, where we talk about how we design those particular tools, how we evaluate them, and how do we make a choice about whether they should be moved into the clinical care pathway. And our final piece today, which I just touched on, is then how do we provide that information to clinicians and to researchers through uses of dashboards, through our training programs too. So that's me, that's what I cover in my talk. My take-home message is, well, you've got to do everything. I think if you're trying to set up a lab that hopes to change practice, you've got to be able to use clinical epidemiological approaches to understand the needs in the population in order to direct the therapeutic tools so you can address those needs, and digitally it can now be scaled using digital techniques to your whole population or within large clinical samples. And you've got to have a wrapper, you've got to have an education, outreach and training program, so those types of novel technologies are embedded into clinical practice and sustained through continued training. And that's a wrap for me.